so we've reached the halfway point in the English, and overall, I'm still very excited about the show in general and what's going on, and especially this arc and Cornelius' character that I really want to talk about. But before we start, I guess I should go into, I guess I should confess, really, that I did struggle with this episode at the start of it, because we did get the Tom Hughes, I think is the actor's name, him coming in and him having the Stephen Ray scene, and I was just super psyched about Stephen Ray being here. And that kind of planting the seed for another story that's coming along here. And this continued on that path for a while, where it's like, we do have this whole other story seemingly going on that we got those little hints of before, that's kind of running parallel with what's going on in like our main story here, with Cornelia and Eli and all them, and that whole plot line. But I don't know if I was just struggling because it sort of felt like there's a whole lot coming from different directions, and I was kind of having trouble keeping up with how things connected to what. I mean, obviously I'm assuming that these things will eventually all sort of come together cohesively, but it did feel like, some jumping around and being pummeled with locations. I don't know if this is just a me thing, but it's like, sometimes I get overloaded when it's like every other scene begins with here's this location, because it kind of feels like, oh, I really need to make a note of this and remember this so it all makes sense. And then it's like, when it's just location after location after location coming up on the screen, I get lost. So, and my mind gets kind of frazzled. So I was basically felt like I was trying to keep up with everything at the start of this, and it was like, so it kind of felt like it was waning a little bit. But then, obviously, I really like the show as a whole, but I'm obviously mainly here because Emily Blunt is the star of this show, and that's what I'm here for. And to see more of what Chaska Spencer does as well, and the different sort of unsavory characters they'll run into. That's the stuff, like I said, just that sort of general basic Western plot. Like I said, it's the idea of building on the Western plot. That's the kind of stuff that I'm here for. So I am looking forward to seeing how these things sort of collide and come together. Like I said, in the meantime, it does feel like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle that's all over the floor. But I trust it. So yeah, once we got back to Cornelia, that's when I start, because especially since we're really starting to see the arc here that I was talking about, anticipating, where we see her in one sense, but it's clear with what's happened to her and what inevitably will probably happen to her throughout this journey. We're going to see significant changes in this character, and I really want to see how Blunt handles that, because she's brilliant constantly. But before that, also, to talk about something really good that I was really noticing in this episode was how beautifully shot this whole thing is. Like, in the first video, we talked about the production values and stuff like that, which is, any sort of competent Western typically has, really good production design and costumes and stuff like that. But some of these really big shots to show, like, how vast, the area and the land is, and also, like, the night to day shots and stuff like that. Like, I love how the night scenes are shot just in general. And then there's that one particular shot where she's riding across the screen, and it's, like, sort of in the evening, and then it just goes to, like, pitch blackness. But the sort of foreground shot of her going across is all the same shot. That's amazing. But there's also shots like, the little girl Rachel, when she, like, reunites with her family, that really big shot. There's also something that I loved here where it was like, we got a few of those shots kind of like that, and how the way it almost looks like a fisheye effect in a way, but I think it's just the curvature of the land and, like, where the hills are that make it look like it has that effect, and the shots are just so big. That stuff's amazing. So I'm really loving especially how great the show looks, and if we continue on that as far as being as visually appealing as anything else, that just goes a long way also. So to talk about some of our side characters here, I was having the whole thing about Gary Farmer and his wife, Katie, I think his name is, the Clarks, is who they are, and the fact that they're not to be trusted now. Like, there was that thing where it was like, in the second episode when they were across the table from each other. It's like, are they trustworthy or are they not? And I'm pretty sure our questions have been thoroughly answered as far as if they're trustworthy or if they're not. And I love the tension, especially between the Gary Farmer character and Eli in that scene, where it's like, it starts off and it's like, there's like maybe a little bit of tension there, but then this tension starts to ramp up a little bit in the way they start antagonizing each other. There's just some things, and you feel like you're right there in between it too, like just the awkwardness of it and the tension of it. But what's great about westerns is, in any other story, awkwardness and tension is just awkwardness and tension. In a western, awkwardness and tension can lead to somebody getting shot or stabbed or anything else. So there's that whole thing. And we're introducing what appears to be another villain, a very scary villain, Black-Eyed Mog, I think they were calling her, where she takes off her sunglasses and reveals that she has no eyelid. They look like her. It looks like her eyelids were like eaten away. So she has this very monstrous appearance, and she's also obviously very much older, which is very sort of subverting expectations for a character like this. But the fact that she's like equally scary and vulgar, and it's like this character in general only had this one scene so far, but it's such an unexpected presence. I was really loving that, and like I said, I've been loving the way like villain characters have been coming and going in this series, and you never know which ones are sticking around and which ones are just going to get offed immediately. And that was kind of off-putting at first because I was really looking forward to Kieran Hines being in this more, but I'm starting to love that now as I'm getting used to it, where it's like, you know, when an evil character comes in, you never know how long they're going to last, or how long they're going to be a threat, or how big of a threat they're going to be. And this Black-Eyed Mog character seems like a really big deal in a really scary way. Like I said, or, you know, just as easily, we may never see her again. It's hard to say. Either one could happen, and that's really fun and unpredictable. So, here's what I'm really loving about the Cornelia arc, and what Blunt gets to work with here, is that we've been traveling along, and she's had, you know, this child that they rescued, and it's been kind of having like a news of the world vibe, like with Tom Hanks and Helena Zengel, and how they had that whole relationship, and it kind of felt like that. And it's sort of seeing, you know, Cornelia get to have her motherly side back after losing it when her child was killed. So it does seem like there's a different vibe to her that's not as, you know, cold-blooded and ready for this side of the world, even though she's got a bloodlust for the person that killed her child. It's sort of like when she's back in that motherly territory, there is something here where it's almost like she's vulnerable again. But like back to stage one vulnerability. And then when this reunion happens early in the episode, it's like once you take that away from her, when you take away the fact, you put her back in this situation where she has no children and she has a murdered child. You can start to see that cold-bloodedness, and that, you know, the fact that she's ready to kill is like really coming back into place at full force. And what better place than now that we've learned that the Clarks are untrustworthy, and she comes back knowing that Eli is probably in danger. And then we get to see the biggest turning point for Cornelia that we've seen up to this point, where she has this amazing scene with Katie, where Katie starts to relate to her and say, like, you know, I've lost children too. See, here's our little graveyard, you know, right here in our yard. And then it's like, it's one thing that they have this connection, that they've both lost children. It's the fact that she says she can just see it in her without even knowing the fact beforehand. She can just look in her eyes and know that she's lost a child because of how much she's been there. And it's this really real moment between these two characters. And then we realize that this is basically a trap. Like, she's luring her in, knowing her vulnerability, and knowing that same kind of pain, and using it against Cornelia in this way to try to get the gun from her. And what I really love about this the most is where I was talking about, like, the longer Cornelia goes on this journey, the more cold-blooded she's probably going to get. And like I said, and she will no longer cry when she kills people like she was at the start. This beautiful maneuver where she kind of reminded me of a move out of the way Denzel fought in Macbeth last year, where she was able, even though the gun was taken from her, she had the knife at the ready and just stabbed her immediately. And there's just you just see the cold bloodedness. And what I love about this especially is I feel like it's not just Cornelia turning like a darkness getting more and more inside her, but the fact that how low it was for Katie to use the method that she did to try to trap Cornelia, and that's what brought the the violence out. The violence out of Cornelia was like how dare you use the death of my child and your children to try to kill me. And so now after this moment, after that, like I said, she's already got children out of her life now, and now this has happened. And it's so when she's in the house with just her and Gary Farmer, this is the Cornelia that we haven't seen yet, where she's getting. It doesn't feel like she's 100% on like a dark side, but she's ready to kill at this point. Like it looks like there's a point in time where she seems like she's going to enjoy killing him. Like she can't wait for the reason to come for her to kill him. And that's, like I said, this is the kind of arc that we've been waiting to see, and the fact that it's kind of coming so gradually. And like I said, and you can see these elements of what's causing it about, you know, when Rachel was in her life versus when there were no children around her. I feel like is where we're seeing this sort of, where we're differentiating where Cornelia is in her head as far as her good side and her violent side, potentially violent side. The violent side that's going to get her farther and farther into this. And the whole thing about her comparing this back and forth with Gary Farmer to her back and forth with Hines, and how much different of a situation she was in at the time, and how she's seen more shit since then. But in that thing where I said that I was really looking forward to seeing her kill Kieran Hines, but then that was, well, like I said, Eli had his own great moment and own great purpose. It felt like the kill was stripped away from her. So now this was the moment where there was nobody around to save Gary Farmer if she should decide this is it. And that's, well, save him from being killed by her. Still resulting in death, but not by her hand. But, yeah, so I feel like we're in a place now to where we're going to get to see Cornelia really start kind of embracing the darkness inside her and the violence inside of her, which is going to suit her well when she, I would certainly hope to God, she comes face to face with the person that killed her child. And then we'll see how that plays out. So, yeah, and then she'll kind of reach the sort of transcendence of where would she go from there? Would the darkness consume her, or is it a pathway to a healing of sorts? We can hope for the latter. It totally could be the former. But either way, Blonde is going to crush it, and I have no doubt about that. So that's the joy in all this. Lastly, the little cliffhanger we're left on with this character, Kills on Water, which is an amazing name. A very badass name. And I'm curious what that is setting up. I don't recall anything prior to this really going into this, so I'll be curious to see where that goes. And once again, how just all of this is going to kind of tie together and come together in a cohesive way. But like I said, just my love of Blunt and watching Blunt, especially with this character having such an arc and her having so much to work with, at the end of the day is what I'm really here for. So so far I'm satisfied halfway through. So I'm very curious to get to the second half, and until then, I think that's it.